Last week I made a story time video talking about a thing that happened while I was in school in US history class. And then I said I would make a more generalized video about being in public school as a deaf student. So that's what we're gonna do today. Subscribers were asking me on YouTube, comments on Twitter and Facebook, which, by the way, links to everything will be down below. Just asking me if I went to a public school, and if I did, what was it like, yada yada yada. Yes, I did go to a public school, and it was a very interesting time. So we'll backtrack a little bit. I had my first diagnosis, yes, that's the word, when I was 12. And I did not notice it. I was a child, why would I notice anything like that? But my abuser, who is deaf, and I was born from, long story, my abuser who was deaf that I was born from, her friend, all of us were together in her friend's house because I was spending time with her daughter as well. She noticed that I just wasn't replying to things, and her name is Uta, so we'll call her Uta. So Uta was talking with a person and said something like, you know, you're deaf, obviously. And I'm just wondering, have you ever checked Ricky's hearing? Because I noticed when we try to, call out her name, she doesn't answer. So I got a hearing test, and I had already been in public school. I have always been in public school from kindergarten to 7th grade when that happened. And even after that, the audiologist said, hey, your kid is very, very deaf in the right ear and a little bit in the left ear, I still went to a public school. It was difficult. I would say it was much more difficult as the years went by because that's when my hearing just got worse. And I would say that it got a lot worse. It was at its worst sometime in the middle of high school, I would say. And this was both with social life and like actual school life, like grades and work. With friends, making friends was a little bit difficult. I didn't keep to a very small social circle because they got me and they wouldn't really do anything to me. But when it came to making new friends, sometimes it was difficult just because it was like, yo, there's no real understanding there. And it was hard to, when we're having lunch or whatever, it's very hard to get involved in a lot of the conversations because there's so much happening at once. There were occasionally times when if somebody was trying to get my attention, like say we're at a school assembly or we're walking down a hall and somebody's going, hey Ricky, and I don't pay attention, they'll make fun of me. They'll like, not really like, ha, but like crack a little bit of a joke and say, what are you deaf or something? And I'm like, yeah. In fact, I remember one guy used to pull my hair when I wasn't like paying attention, so he would run up behind me and like pull my hair because I just wasn't turning around. Now I wish I could have probably kicked him in the shins for that, but he was a little weird anyway. Nobody was very comfortable around him. But anyway, so sometimes that was difficult, and I remember if somebody was trying to talk to me and I would always be like, what? And then there would kind of, crack jokes about that as well. A few of those kids were the bullies at school, so. But the social life wasn't really so difficult. It didn't really make me feel embarrassed about anything so much. The real difficult part was the actual work part. So I wasn't put into any like special ed classes or anything. I was still with regular teachers, regular classes. There was no deaf program in my school as far as I can tell. If there was one, nobody told me about it, and it was very, very secret. You keep your secrets well. I didn't really get any special assistance. There just wasn't any provided for me. Nobody ever talked to me about these things. My counselors never mentioned it. And so when I would tell my teachers, hey, we've got a problem, most of the time I was just sat like in the front of the class and we kind of hope for the best. Sometimes they would re-explain things to me, help me out after, everybody else is kind of like settled and doing their work. The most difficult subjects were English. I think English was honestly the most difficult subject for me because there was a lot of reading things out loud, reading from books. So it was very difficult, say if I'm like in the middle of the class, sometimes I was in the middle of the class and people in front would be talking and on either side of me, left and right behind me, and I was like, okay, I cannot hear what this person is, and I was constantly losing my place. And if you're constantly losing your place to teachers kind of get annoyed because it's like, you're supposed to be paying attention to which, yeah, sometimes that kind of happened, I think, maybe. But I had one teacher, Miss Tilton, I think, and I told her, I remember this was in senior year, I think, I said, look, I'm not really following along here, and I don't want to slow anything down, so the solution was to go out in the hallway and read from a chapter, which, okay, that worked out pretty well. But then eventually, she didn't really like me being away from the class, so then I had to get involved back into the class. So it was kind of a back and forth thing. I was a very good student. My grammar was great. I could be involved in learning about grammar, fixing grammar on a sentence, fixing grammatic errors on the board and what have you. My grammar, I know, probably isn't perfect when I'm talking or writing, but I was very good at fixing things. Anyways, I do remember during discussions when we would be reading books, and I would go up to her and I'd be like, so what was this? I didn't get this. And then there would be like, it just kind of like flew away. Like, weren't you paying attention? And I'm like, kind of can't. And then she was like, oh. So we can talk about more of the negative things about it. This is just a video on either side that it'll actually be on. We'll take you to the story time video where I was talking more in depth about what happened in US history class. But another thing that happened was in technical math, and honestly this could have gone for even all the hearing students in the classes with me, but this particular teacher just wasn't that great at teaching. My teacher would have the overhead in the front, but then he would be teaching from the back. So I was constantly looking at this, but then looking at him, because it's like, I need the visual, because I don't understand what you're saying, but I don't understand what's happening with the visual, because there's like words and explanation, so I had to go look at him, and it was like back and forth constantly for an hour and a half every single day, and it was really, really difficult. After that would happen, I would look in the book and try to, figure it out. I would ask people around me to try to figure it out. And when that didn't work out, I would go to the teacher himself and go, hey, could you help me out with this? Not getting it. It was very difficult. Sometimes he would help, fine. But then sometimes it was like, well, why weren't you paying attention? Like, go look at the book. Why weren't you paying attention to this? And I'm like, I tried, man. I tried. I promise you. I really, really tried. I'm not like that guy in a corner that's just, doodling. Like, seriously, I'm trying. Like, that was, kind of a little bit complicated. Assemblies, those were a pain. I cannot understand anybody that is talking into a microphone, like, from far away. It's just too muffly. Videos that we watched that were captioned, like in the storytime video, that was a pain. Group projects were also difficult because it was just, kids, they're kind of like, well, this person doesn't really understand what's going on, so we're just going to kind of, like, keep to ourselves. And then I was trying to, get involved, and then it just wasn't working. Communication barriers were being a pain in the butt. So I was that person that liked to work alone just because I found it easier, and I didn't have to rely on other people because it just wasn't working out. Sometimes it was difficult working alone, but it was also very difficult working with other people. So my grades weren't really the best. Ironically, I think that's the way to use this word. My Mandarin online class was probably one of the best classes that I was in, and the one that I excelled at the most, which is strange because Mandarin is a tonal language, which requires me to really pay attention to listening. Because if you hear a tone wrong, you're gonna get the word wrong. Mandarin requires a lot of hard work and dedication to listen and to make sure that you say it correctly. But I was one of the best students in that class. My Mandarin teacher told me that I was one of the best students, and I made something between a 94 to a 96 in that class. So yeah, the deaf kid made an A in Mandarin, a tonal language which required a hell of a lot of listening, and that has always been my problem. And then I kept with that for 4 years, and I've forgotten a lot of it. So I know somebody's gonna ask, so do you wish you would have gone to a deaf school? Honestly, yeah, I would have liked to experience it, because I'm 24 years old, and I'm just now finding who I am, and I just wish this was something that would have happened sooner, because there was a deaf school around. It wasn't that far. But it wasn't considered an option for me, I guess. When I think about it, I just wish that it would have been considered an option for me, and I wish somebody would have thought, you know what, maybe this would be better for her because she's deaf, like, and this is a deaf school, and they specialize, they know how to teach deaf kids, because that's the issue with mainstream schools. They don't really know how to teach kids who are deaf and hard of hearing that may not excel at oralism like other deaf and hard of hearing people might. I mean, yeah, I can talk, I've been doing it forever, but my listening skills just aren't there. It's not even like science, that's the way it is. So I think if I had been in an area with a language that I know would have worked better for me, I think it would have been easier, my grades would have been a lot better, and yeah. But it is what it is. I graduated out of high school just fine with a GPA I'm not entirely proud of, but that was 7 years ago, so oh well. I'm still a pretty good smart cookie. If you want to check me out on my social media, all links to that will be put down below. You can also check out my Patreon, also linked down below if you want to support my content. And I make videos every Monday and Thursday, unless they're otherwise due to emergencies. And I will see you later. Bye.